Okay, so we will get ourselves on the rock and roll, I think, ladies and gentlemen. Formally, a very warm welcome to you all. It's a great pleasure to see you all here this evening. Thank you very much for joining me. And yeah, I tell you what, I've got a great evening lined up for us tonight, an hour of fun and games. If you've been to any of my interviews across this series of lockdown previously, then you'll know that I spend a little bit of time pressing a few buttons to make a bit of an intro video. So today is no different, and I have a couple of minutes for you to enjoy. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you all enjoyed that. I tell you what, I'm so happy that this legend of the rebound world has been able to join us this evening. It's a really great pleasure to welcome him to this wonderful interview. His smile and his sense of humour is as broad as his knowledge, and that is, of course, to say that it's immense. His CV boasts an enviable multi-layered career, which has seen him don his Speedos as an international trampoline athlete. He's participated within and grown the juvenile sport across Great Britain of trampolining during its formative years of development. And he's supervised and implemented meaningful change within the delivery of trampoline coaching nationally through his work with the BTF and also further the education and learning of countless individuals as both a senior trampoline tutor and assessor, but also throughout his eminent career as a PE teacher and head of department. One of the proud sons of Wales, this titan of the trampoline world, has flown the flag for his beloved country at the highest level in multiple roles, but has never forgotten that the care and nurture of grassroots is where the future of our sport is to be found. Now, whilst many of his roles require a very responsible and serious approach, the cheeky twinkle in his eye has remained ablaze across his career, meaning that fun and laughter is a precious commodity that he freely shares with those around him. Ladies and gents, please join me in welcoming the bang-tidy Welsh trampoline wonder that is Mr. Tony James. Tony, in you come, dear boy. You can turn your camera on now. Hey!
Here we are. How you doing? Good to see
Hello,
you.
Tony. How are you, dear boy?
I'm very well, thank you very much.
How did you find that intro video?
Well, I don't know where you got all those photographs from, but very interesting.
Oh,
And
well,
in fact, that last one, where we were coming back from Prague, I think it was the Friendship Cup, and it was rather a long weekend. And I was rather cream crackered at that moment in time. So I said, I'm just going to take 5 minutes, put my head down. But of course, I think somebody took the photograph. So there we go.
oh well,
There's no
Borida,
peace for the wicked.
Borida, thank you for joining us this evening. It's absolutely brilliant. I'll tell you what, there's been a lot of excitement about you coming on tonight, and indeed the participation of the number of people that are here live listening to you is one of the highest that we've had over these series of talks. So that's testament to your reputation and the appreciation of you, dear boy. So yeah, amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, if any of you have a question that you'd like to put to Tony at some point throughout this evening's proceedings, I've got my chat box open, so if there's anything that you'd like to ask, then just stick it in the old chat window, and if it falls in line with everything that I've written, then I'll pick on you and you can unmute yourselves and ask him yourself. Happy days. Right, so Tony, where do I start, dear boy? Where do I start? With a career as wide as yours, I just have no idea. I tell you what, if it's okay, I like to start my interviews with a little step back in time to when trampolining wasn't an intrinsic part of your life. So I hope that's okay. Can you remember how old you were when you first stepped foot on a trampoline and fell over a few times? When was that exactly?
I think I was about, excuse me, I think I was about 13, and it was in a youth club in the Rhondda in Mardy. And the trampoline itself was a canvas sheet, solid web bed that left puddles on it when you walked across it. And it was under the watchful eye of a chap called Sid Roberts, who sadly is no longer with us. So that's how I first started, and that was back in, must be 62, 61, something like that. And in fact, I can remember my very first competition, which was the National Eisteddfod for Wales. Yes, they had a trampoline competition in the National Eisteddfod. It was in Swansea, and it was in a small hall, small gymnasium, a school gym. And Dave will remember this as well, I'm sure. And the set routine wasn't there. There wasn't one. You had to perform for 5 minutes. So it was just three of us, a chap who was Sid Roberts, another guy called Andrew Webley Parry, and all I could do basically was a front somersault, and that was about it. So I did a couple of seat drops and back drops and a front somersault. Andrew did a back somersault, and of course the boys from Kemp Forest were there. So that was Dave Curtis, Mike Williams, Glyn Maddy, Malcolm Humphreys, Calvin Clark, with their coach Albert Duggan. And of course they started their 6-minute demonstration, but of course the gym wasn't high enough, so they couldn't jump. So basically, I think they then got a trumpet out and they started doing a demonstration on the trumpet. So it ended up with something like, it must be about 10 of them, I suppose, altogether. I can't remember how many. But then Dave did a front somersault over the whole lot. You know, they finished with that, you know, the spectacular where you would have one person do a front somersault and he would stand in front of the trumpet, somebody do a front somersault over him, and then there'd be two, and then it'd be three, and so on. And I think it might be Mike Williams or Calvin Clark, I'm not quite sure. I did a front somersault over all of them.
So inadvertently, they'd actually created extreme double mini. That's what you're telling me.
That's right. That's it. That's it. So that was my very first experience of a trampoline competition, long time ago.
Did you have any idea that when you were taking those first steps in trampoline and you know, doing your first competition, that the entire rest of your life was going to be infiltrated by this amazing, crazy, addictive sport that we all enjoy? You know, did
not at that moment in time. I realized I was you know, having lots of fun and thoroughly enjoying it, but I think the first spark came when we went to the first World Championships, which was in '63 in the Royal Albert Hall. I think Dave was there. He was, I think, a travelling reserve, a boy of about 13 or 14, if I remember rightly, because Mike Williams was competing.
Yeah.
And my coach, a chap called Sid Roberts, he drove up in a Mark I Cortina, two-door, with bench seats in the front, and there were 6 of us in the car. So we drove all the way from the Ronda, all the way up to Acton, parked in the car park there, and then jumped on the tube and saw the first World Championships. And that set the spark when we saw the Americans, Russians weren't there then started trampolining there, I think. And I think Danny Millman, they won it. And the competition was based on a knockout system. There were 4 trampolines, 2 red and 2 blue. And all the judges had to do was to put up a red card or a blue card. It was a knockout system. And I think then I saw my first triple back somersault, and I nearly sort of fell off my seat. And that was on an inch web 77A with cables.
I think that across my trampoline career, the judges have been using a knockout system as well. Only they've had red numbers rather than red and blue paddles.
That's right. So that's what, set the spark, and that just inspired us all, and basically it just went on from there.
So from having a bit of fun, how did you turn just jumping around and throwing yourselves over each other on trumpets and things like that? How did you turn that into representing the Welsh international team? Where did you train? Who were your coaches to when you were getting to that kind of point in your trampoline career?
Well, the first coach, of course, was Sid Roberts in Mardy Youth Club, and I competed. I think my first ever trampoline routine was in Cardiff College of Education in Kincoed, and it was an 8-bounce routine, and this was about 65, I think, and later on then in 66 I went along to Cardiff to take the first judge award. There was no tiered sort of system then, it was just the judge award. And that was my first sort of formal qualification, if you like. And Sid Aaron took that. So that's when I first met Sid Aaron. And at that time, when trampolining was being developed, Sid Aaron and Albert Duggan, the coach of Cefn Forest Trampoline Club, where Dave and Mike and all those were, they would hold a number of sort of trampoline clinics at weekends and demonstrations all over the country.
Yeah.
So, that's the way I got involved. And then, of course, in 1967, I entered Cardiff Training College to train as a teacher. And that's when I met Sid, or got involved with Sid. He first met me, or I first met him at the World Championships, because we had a chat, because we came down on the floor, and he'd recognized me from that competition I had done the year before. And he then set the seed. Have you ever thought of, coming to college or, expanding your knowledge? So then, I got my head down in school, got the relevant qualifications, and then I didn't think about going to college until, a little bit later. So I worked for 3 years after I left school, left at the, age of 15, got my O-levels, and then competing at sort of this local level. And then I entered Cardiff Training College at 67. And my first international match was against Holland in 1969. Yeah. And of course, Dave and Mike and all those were there, together with Tony Abbott and John Beer. And we sort of formed the sort of Welsh team. Now, that was very strange because going across, I was the travelling reserve, because there was lots of high quality trampolinists around in those days. Mention of them: Tony Abbott, John Beer, of course Mike Williams, Dave Curtis, and the other boys from Cefn Forest, and a chap from Cardiff, Tommy Gunning, who'd actually won the British Championship, I think, the year before. Well, as I was a traveling reserve, I didn't need to actually compete, but I trained with the boys during the day. And the officials from the Dutch team said, can you nominate your 2 judges, please? And Sid Aaron, who was the head of delegation, we've only got 1. And then somebody said, Tony, haven't you taken a judge award? And I said, yes. So my very first judging experience was at an international match. So I then judged Dave, Mike and the boys.
That sounds very much like being thrown from the frying pan into the fire.
It's like being thrown off the 10-meter board into the deep end. Yes, it was.
So you've earned yourself several nicknames across your time in the sport, including Skippy, whilst teaching at school, I understand, and your now famous nickname Tony Fliff, and of course we can see that on your Zoom label. Because of your amazing ability to perform lots of different flipper skills. I've heard that one of your famous trademark skills while you were the man in the Speedos was a pure back-in double full out with a twist in all the right places. Is that true?
This is very true. I didn't perform it very often, and it wasn't the sort of skill that you would actually put in a routine. But yes, I did do a double full.
To put in the routine, just to make the judges go, ah!
That's right. Well, it's based on the back-in full out, which is a back somersault, look for the bed, which you then do a half twist, and then you just Barani it down. Well, at that stage, the Barani becomes a Rudy. Basically, you take off, and you just give it everything you've got. It's like a triple back somersault. Open at the right time, you hope, and then wrap in the twist. And then when you open out, hopefully the bed is underneath you. Amazing.
I think that sounds pretty much like my trampolining career. I mean, the trampoline often wasn't underneath me when I landed, so I had some problems in that regard. You mentioned that obviously you were with the team when they won the British title in 1971. Yourself, John Beer, Tony Abbott, Simon Rees. And you were the travelling reserve, so you didn't actually have to compete. However, as the...
No, hang on a sec. In the British, that's the British Championships in 1971. In 1969 is when I went to Holland, and that's when I was the travelling reserve, so I judged. Now, in the British Championship in 71, I did compete, and I competed 2 routines. Oh. But of course, the highest 3 scores counted. Well, I don't think any of my scores actually counted because of the quality of John, Tony Abbott, and of course Simon Rees. So I think may well have won it or came second on that occasion.
Regardless of whether your score counted or not, you were in the team, and
I was in the team, yes,
as an intrinsic member of that team and a training partner, and you're one of those people that creates that amazing winning environment. You have just as much right, even if your scores didn't actually count, but you have just as much right to stand up on that podium and take the medal. What does it feel like? I mean, I'm sure there's lots of people who are going to watch this video who have never been and perhaps will never be a British champion. So can you just describe what that feeling's like to have dedicated yourself to that moment and to then achieve it and step up on the podium and everyone's going, ah! And the applause is going and that medal's hung over your neck? How does that feel? What's that feeling like?
Well, it's just an amazing feeling. You're just so basically chuffed because of all that hard work you've put in, and you've got a sort of a just reward for it. And it's sort of gratifying to know that even though my scores weren't actually counted, the boys could relax because they knew that if something went wrong, then my score could be called upon. So I was the backup, basically.
Yeah.
You can't beat that feeling. You just can't beat that feeling of coming first. And I think that's what the only one competition where I did come first. But saying that, I did compete in a veterans competition up in Birkenhead, organised by Kathy Page, and I did have a gold medal for that one, I can remember. But of course, during the era when I was competing, it was a bit difficult to get to a gold medal position with people like Dave Curtis and Mike Williams around. So I was always sort of, you know, down the pecking order a little bit, but I didn't mind that at all because the quality was so, it was just amazing. I mean, Dave and Mike second and third in the world on 2 occasions. You know, can't get much higher than that, can you?
Well, you obviously you've talked about quality. I mean, there were other people that you were both training alongside and competing alongside, you know, for an extended period. You know, world and European champions Carl Farrer and Stuart Matthews, world silver medalist, and he's in the room tonight, Dave Curtis. Bob Hughes, who was world synchro champion with Paul Luxon, and of course world champion Wayne Miller. I mean, that's a formidable list of immensely talented and successful trampoline athletes. Obviously, Wayne Miller was, of course, the man who penned the name for the triple twisting double back, the Miller. Did you ever watch him developing his fancy schmancy new skill that he was going to be rolling out at some point? Did you ever see that while it was being developed, or were you there when it was competed for the first time?
No, I was there after he had developed it. I met him in my first teaching post. I was teaching in Southend, and it was a school called Westcliff High School. A chap there called Brownlee. And Wayne Miller, in fact, came along to the school. Now, when I was in Westcliff, John Beer was actually teaching in Canvey Island. And we used to go up to Jack Kelly in Harlow to train. And I would train with a young lady by the name of Leslie Roost, who actually lived in Southend, and she was actually in Westcliff High School for girls, which is next door. So every Wednesday we'd go up in the car. And Wayne Miller, in fact, later on, obviously met Leslie and was taken aback. And later on, Leslie became Wayne Miller's wife. So I trained for a year with Wayne Miller's wife. But Wayne, of course, I trained with him 2 occasions, I think, in Westcliff School. And I've you know, seen a couple of demos that he did. One in particular in Polytechnic of London, where he went through his flipper skills. Now, he had the amazing talent of actually talking through the actual performance of his skills. And he would say, this is the 1.5, now the 2.5 coming in, here it comes. Bang. Quite amazing, incredible, an incredibly powerful trampolinist. I would imagine his sergeant jump would be about 44 or something. He was just immensely strong.
That's brilliant. So you represented Wales from 1969 to 1978, and you were nominated as the team captain in 1976. What was it like, you know, as a national and an international trampoline athlete at that time? You know, you were competing against all the people that we've just talked about, and you were running around the world. And let's bear in mind that this was all at a time where the sport was still relatively young. So you guys were carving a new direction for the sport. I mean, what was that like as a lifestyle?
Well, the picture you paint is a bit rosier than it actually was, because I competed for Wales. I didn't really compete for the UK. But I did compete against those people, Carl Farrer, Stuart Matthews, and Paul Luxon, when they were at the open competitions, or we used to call them then, and of course in the British finals. The match in which I was team captain was against Scotland and Denmark up in Scotland. We unfortunately lost the match, simply because we didn't have any women. But if we took the men only, then we'd hammered both Scotland or beat them comfortably, and Denmark. And that was up in Meadowbank in Edinburgh. I think Mike Williams was team manager at the time. Myself, Dave Curtis, John Beer. I don't know whether Tony Albert was there. Mark Wakely was there, and a guy from Bristol, I can't remember his name now. But yes, and that competition, I scored my highest tariff that I competed.
Which was?
And that was at that time 8.8. It contained six double somersaults. So if you work it out today,
I was just about to say, what's that in today's money?
It'll be about 11 and a half.
Tidy. On inch beds, on a sheet?
No, they were. It was at the time when they were changing. They were 1/2-inch beds or 12 millimeters, and they were experimenting with a 1/2 by a 1/4. And some of the beds had the 1/4-inch strand going from side to side.
Yeah.
And some of them had the strands going from end to end. So they undecided, which was which. But later on, they decided to throw it out altogether and get the 6x6 in. And that basically, I think, saw the end of my career. I know, and possibly Dave's as well, because of the total difference in technique needed, because the 6x6 was much more powerful. And you can imagine by a 12 by 12, you want to get everything out from your bootstraps when you were doing things on a 1/2-inch bed. But then transmitting that
I remember the first time that I had a go on a 6 mil trampoline, having learned everything on a 1/2-inch bed. And for some reason, I decided that a competition was the time to try a 6 mil bed out for the first time. And I jumped up on in my warm up and quite literally got thrown off. Everything I did, I was being caught by my spotters. It was mortifyingly embarrassing. But yeah, I remember the first time I tried that 6 mil bed. So you completely understand the difference in training required when there's that step up in equipment provision, which of course is continuing to this day.
Well, that's right. That's right. I mean, and the time of flight now, which of course is a requirement. I mean, there was a book written, it's called 2 Seconds of Freedom. I don't think anybody ever achieved that 2 seconds of freedom. But nowadays, I think some of the top trampolinists are actually doing that, where they're getting time of flight up in the 20s, which is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
One of your competitive experiences that's been regaled to me, and I have to say from a couple of different sources,
yes,
is your visit to Moscow, where you took part in the Soviet Championships in 1969 at the Palace of Sport in Moscow. I understand that you stayed at the University of Moscow and you trained with the other Russian competitors, and several of whom took a longer travel time to get to Moscow, traveling across Russia, than it did for you guys to get there, because Russia is like massive. Moving from Siberia to Moscow was a longer journey time than it was from the UK to Moscow. Can you talk to me about the training gym that you were working in at that event, and the quality of the equipment and the safety aids that they'd provided you?
Well, yes, it was in 1970 when we were invited, and we went across with myself, John Beer, Tony Abbott, and with Sid Aaron, and we stayed in Moscow University, and that's where we trained. And the competition was in sort of Hall of Sport, which basically was like a theatre where we had the competition, and it was just one trampoline on the stage. And when we trained, I mean, the Russian trampolines, if I can compare, the Russian trampoline was like an army jeep, and the Nissan Goliath 12 millimeter 1/2-inch bed was like a brand new Ford Focus. So, it was the creme de la creme in those days.
Am I right in thinking that the Russian trampoline beds were, relatively speaking, homemade with like RSJs and bits of fabric to make up the?
No, they were relatively well designed, but they were very, what can I say, utilitarian, very stout, and they didn't have much ping in them. But we trained on Nissan Goliath. They actually imported in Nissan Goliath specifically for those championships, and then subsequently, because they competed in I think the first competition they may well have competed in would be the Europeans in Edinburgh in '72. They did come over, I'm digressing now, but I think it's pertinent. In '67, they came across to compete in the World Championships, the Russians, and as a warm-up, they had a competition against UK, and that was in the Avon Lido in Port Talbot. And the Russian team competed against the British team. Now, the British team at that time comprised 4 boys from Cem Forest. So that's Dave, Mike, Glyn Maddy, and I think it was Malcolm Humphreys, aka Sharky, and a guy from England called Clive Brigden. And we beat the Russians. So as a result, when the Russians got to know that the British team was virtually one club, i.e. the Cem Forest Trampoline Club, they couldn't cope with the fact that the Russian national team were beaten by a club from Wales with an English guy helping them out. So they didn't then enter in the World Championships. They withdrew the following weekend. And they didn't come back in. And I think the first time they came in into the international scene would be in Meadowbank in the European Championships in '72. And of course, they won everything because the tariff then, let me see, I think they doubled the tariff value by then. And because they just threw everything, they were a flurry of arms and legs, they beat everybody on tariff. And I think as a result of that, that's right, because they then doubled the form score in importance rather than, because at that time, the form score and the tariff score sort of were equal weightings. They were throwing tariff routines of about 9 or 10. And of course, the form score, which you get 4 judges and you'd average the middle 2 judges. So you'd have 1 form score. So of course, the tariff, if you had a very high tariff, flurry of arms and legs, you could, do very well. Yeah. So later, as a result of those Russians, they then said, right, what we'll do now, we'll add the middle 2. So it doubled the value of the form score in relation to the difficulty. Anyway, let's get back to the bit in Russia, in Moscow, training in those in the hall on Nissan Goliath. Now, at that time, there was no other Nissan Goliath in the country. So you can imagine if a trampolinist landed on the spring and damaged the springs, there were no spare parts. So what the Russians started doing, they would throw a mat on, not to protect the trampolinist, to protect the springs, because it couldn't get spare parts. So when we go back to Cardiff, we thought, that's a good idea. If you're trying something new, like my back in double full out, let's throw a mat on. So if you don't land it properly, then you don't have such a crunch. So we throw a big crash mat on. And as a result of that, I believe that's when the use of throwing in crash mats to, give performers a soft landing when they're learning something, that's when it first started. Now, I don't know if there's anybody out there who knows anything different, or was it the boys from Cardiff actually started this practice of using the crash mat to give us happy landings?
Well, of course, on or about that time, the Nissan UK operation that was being headed up by Ted Blake at the time, they developed an end deck product, and they started putting crash mats on top of that.
Well, that was as a result, because Sid Aaron and Ted Blake were very good friends. So Sid, in fact, we had in 1971, the year after, an international safety conference, which was held in the Bloomsbury Centre in London. And at that conference, there were people there like Ronnie Munn, George Harry, both professional trampolinists in the day. Paul Luxon was there, and myself and John Beer. And with Sid Aaron, we gave a demonstration of the use of crash mats to improve safety. And one of the things we did was the 1 3/4 back, because in the 60s and 70s, the 1 3/4 back was, this is the double back somersault, but landing on your stomach and not on your feet, was regarded as a more difficult skill than the 1 3/4 front. So instead of giving it 0.7 in tariff, they ordered an extra 2 points. So 1 3/4 back was worth 0.9. So of course it was worth doing. But of course, if you didn't land the 1 3/4 back right, it could be quite entertaining. So of course,
that's why it's crazy back, isn't it?
that's right. So of course, the use of a crash mat for that was ideal. And that's one of the things that I did at that demonstration. Sid Aaron held me in the rig for the one we got the back. It was a portable rig. It was sort of bolted onto the side of the trampoline. Couldn't go very high because it only had a 16-foot ceiling. And did it once we got it back. John threw a crash mat underneath me to land. And then I took it out of the belt and then just did it onto the crash mat. Then they took the crash mat away and I took it, put it on the bed. So that was the sort of demonstration that brought about the use of crash mats. And Nissan actually then produced a big, it was like an extra extension to the frame with the same grade of metal. But I think Dave did us a favor in that with his company then, Sportfix, he developed a much smaller one, a much more portable one. And I think that it started from there then.
So so there you are, spearheading the athlete-centered approach that we all know and love today.
Yes, basically looking after each other. Yes, that's it.
If it's okay, I'm going to call on CCYC. You've asked a question which I'm going to incorporate now, if that's all right. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question about coaching and judging? CCYC. Are you there? Are you there? I'll tell you what, if they're not there, I shall ask it on their behalf. What level do you prefer coaching, Tony? Do you prefer coaching the big stuff or the grassroots stuff? And which level do you prefer judging at?
I prefer judging at a high level, obviously, because you see a much more polished performance. But coaching, I sort of coach it all really, because I'm very fortunate in where I am in that I have set sort of classes with set youngsters, and I do like to sort of follow youngsters through, but quite often I substitute for, I'm a bit of a floater. So I've got sort of 2 sessions where I'm coaching a definite group.
A very delicate term, Tony.
That's right. And then I sort of help out where other coaches are not available for that day, or myself and Lisa, we sort of double coach, we sort of coach together. So I'm in a very fortunate position that I coach the whole range. But I do really like teaching sort of intermediates. How can I put it? Not raw beginners, because that takes a lot of hard work because you're actually going to be on the bed with them, and I can't get on the bed with them. But just the next stage, introducing them to somersaults, and because I can still use a rig, and I use that an awful lot. So basically, we're looking at sort of NDP 2 or 3, that sort of level there. And once I know I've laid a sound foundation, I can sort of move them on, knowing full well that they got a lot of cash in the bank, so to speak.
Brilliant. Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, let's have a quick chat about your working career. You qualified as a teacher at Cardiff Teacher Training College as part of the University of Wales, which is obviously now part of Cardiff Met, back in 1970, specialising in physical education, geography, and anatomy and physiology. And of course, this is when you met your wonderful wife-to-be, Sheila, who was at in the same year of you as you at college, but obviously not a PE student. Was it love at first sight in the campus coffee shop, or was it your prowess on the trampoline and the vision of you in your Speedos that was the clinching factor?
No, I think definitely my budgie smugglers had an influence there. No, I think it was, we used to have lots of dances, lots of hops, they were called, sort of discos. And I did see this rather beautiful young lady that I took a fancy to, and we started chatting, and just basically it sort of mushroomed from there, should I say. But I don't know whether the budgie smugglers had any effect.
So while you were studying at Cardiff, there were a couple of other notable trampolinists in your year who were qualifying as school teachers at the same time. Trampoline demigod of the future, Mr. John Beer, who actually you shared a flat with whilst you were at college, and the two of you, I believe, lived with each other after you graduated as well. And then, of course, the third member of the Three Musketeers, Mr. Tony Abbott. Is it right? Was my understanding correct that the selection to the Welsh team, which obviously you and John served on at length, was dependent upon the ability to grow a magnificent moustache, which sadly Tony Abbott couldn't do, so he wasn't eligible. Is that right?
No, completely false. Completely and utterly false. I don't think John actually grew a moustache. Yeah, he did grow a beard in the third year, and that was about it. Yeah, yeah.
Of
no
course.
Facial hair, I don't think. I think too much wind resistance, actually, when, you know, I'm doing my back in double full out.
Of course, John joined you as a men's British trampoline champion, and then he went on and gained a further 26 world and European championship caps as a performer, as an international Olympic coach, as head of delegation and national technical performance director. And of course, he went on to coach British, European, and world champions Stuart Matthews and Carl Furrer. Now, obviously, I've done a bunch of research for this interview, and John had more than a few words to say about you.
Oh, yeah. All right, okay.
In fact, I tell you what, let's hear from the man himself.
All right.
I've known Tony for the last nearly 55 years.
I've been asked to send you a little message from Ollie just to let you know how much you mean to us at Free Fallers.
We first met when we were students at Cardiff College, training to become teachers. Whilst we were there, we did a lot of trampolining.
I think it's honest to say that since the day that you walked into our club, you've become one of the most favourite people there. All the positivity you bring, your kindness. You're just such a good role model, and I think everybody just loves to be around you and with you.
Tony and I were never going to be world champions, but Tony was the most amazing trampolinist. He could do so many different multiple twisting double somersaults. In fact, he was called Tony Fliff, and one of the moves that I found absolutely amazing was he used to do a back in, double full out, double back somersault, nothing in the first, and double twist in the second somersault. Quite amazing.
I can honestly say that since you've come to the club, you definitely make me want to be a better person, because that's just the way you are.
Tony's gone on to do a lot of work in Wales with the Welsh Trampolining, been very successful with them, and also as a teacher, a coach, and an analyst. He's got all the qualities to become, and has been, a great judge.
The support that you've shown me over the last 10 to 12 years, which is the time you've been with us, well, I can't thank you enough.
I'm not a big fan of judges. As a competitor, they always seem to give me the wrong marks, but there, we have to live with that, don't we?
I see you as a second father, and I always will. So thank you very much for coming to us and being such a good friend to me.
Anyway, I hope that he'll have another 50 years of trampolining, and I wish him all the very, very best.
Brilliant. Don't know what to say.
Of course, John, joined by Lisa there from Free Fallers, and another amazing person that's enjoys your company at this time. So yeah, it was lovely that they took the time to share with me their thoughts on you. But one of the things that John actually mentioned was a a time when the two of you, while you were still at teacher training college, that you went and watched a rather bloody film called Soldier Blue,
Oh, God.
and then you drove together in John's MG Midget. And it got you parked it up on the 3rd floor of the multi-story car park, and then after you came out, some shenanigans happened. Can you remember what happened that night?
Well, when we came out, we went to jump in the car, but unfortunately, the car park was shut, so we couldn't get out. But we got up to the 3rd floor, whatever it was. And all of a sudden, we heard this shout, "Oi, what do you want?" And a dog was barking loudly, his big Alsatian. So me and John actually sort of leapt over this wall, and literally hanging on by our fingernails.
3 floors.
There was a drop, and we were imagining this dog actually now chewing at our hands. But of course, the security guard got the dog under control. We climbed back over. And then explaining our predicament, he said, "Oh, don't worry." He said, "I think this car will get under the barrier." So we went down. John drove it as the security guard and myself actually lifted the barrier, and we got the MG Midget underneath. Anyway, we got home and we'd put some steaks in the fridge to eat afterwards. We opened the door, and if anybody remembers what Soldier Blue was like, we just couldn't face it. We just had a bowl of cornflakes and went to bed.
Oh dear, that's a great story. But so after graduating from teacher training college, you took a job teaching at PE at Westcliff High School for Boys in Southend-on-Sea in Essex. Now, being a born and bred Welshman, what made you leave the comfort of the rolling hills of Wales and the honey gold silkiness baritone voice of Tom Jones echoing through the valleys to swap it for suburban Essex?
Well, it's a matter of supply and demand. At that time, Wales produced many more teachers than any other part of the country. So there were always huge competition for PE jobs within South Wales, within Wales itself. So this job came up in Southend, and I recognised it was a trampoline school. The chap's name, I can remember it now, was Harry Brownlee. And I had competed against his lads as a competitor in various competitions, and I had met him previously. So I was quite happy to go along and teach at the school, which was great. And it was also a boys' selective grammar school, and they taught rugby. So of course, rugby being my second love, I was in God's pocket. So it was a trampoline school. And of course, that's where I met Wayne Miller and trained with him a couple of times, because that's where he met his wife. Of course, he used to train with his then sort of girlfriend. And basically then, during the time in Southend, my good wife was actually working she wasn't my wife then, she was my fiancée before we got married. So I was in Southend and she was back home in Wales, and she was teaching in Rumney, where I live at the moment. And I think it was May, she rang up and said, "Tony, I got something to tell you. I've just bought a house." So the house we're living in now, it was, well, the reason the people who lived there, they were two old spinsters basically, and they sort of passed away, and the other one was unable to sort of keep up the house. So the house was up for sale. Their Canadian relatives came over to sort of sort everything out, and Sheila's dad recognised the house was for sale, and that was it. So I then had to move back to Wales.
Yeah, of course. The strong pull of the valleys called you back when you took a job teaching PE at Treorchy Comprehensive School in Rhondda Cynon Taf, and then subsequently in 1973 at Blackwood Comprehensive near Caerphilly, where you spent the rest of your teaching career until you retired in 2007, where you taught PE and geography, and you were head of department for 15 years. When you add all of that up together, that's 37 years of teaching. I mean, wow, what a fabulous achievement.
There we go. Yeah. I enjoyed every minute of it.
Well, what was it about the school sport environment that kept you coming back, you know, day after day, term after term, year after year? And was trampolining the favorite bit of your school sport delivery?
It definitely was. And a guy who I mentored, a chap called Phil Villa, who's actually teaching there at the moment, he sort of carried on the tradition. And if you ever come to any schools competition in Wales, there would be about 160 competitors, and about 80 of them would be from Blackwood School.
Wow.
So I just loved the situation where you would meet a youngster coming in at the age of 11, and then you could see them develop through being a child into a young adult, and you had a hand in that development. And to be able to introduce them to, you know, any sport or any sort of physical activity, and have some sort of influence in the way in which they turned out.
Yeah.
And one of the things about modern technology, Facebook, quite often, you know, I'm strolling through and I'm a member of various groups, and one of them is Blackwood's Comprehensive School, past and present. And I put a little comment on there. And then before you know it, the 10 or other comments, Skippy, are you still alive? Yes, I'm still alive and kicking.
If it's okay, let's chat very briefly about your role within trampolining as a non-competitor. So you attended the inaugural meeting of the Welsh division of the newly formed British Trampoline Federation, the BTF, back in 1966, and you've remained an active member of the organisation ever since, including remaining on the Central Council of the BTF for 18 years. You've served in roles for the Welsh Trampoline Technical Committee as things like secretary, competition secretary, chair, staff coach, national squad coach. What is it about the governance of sport that's engaged you across your career and that continues to keep you involved in that kind of role to this date?
I don't really know. I suppose if I didn't do it, I don't know whether anybody else would have done it. I suppose that would have been the case. I was heavily involved with the sport of trampolining as a competitor and a coach, and I sort of fell into it naturally, being a PE man, where you are always organising events. You know, at one end, you're organising fixtures for rugby matches between schools, and at the other end, then you're organising athletics meetings that involve several schools. So naturally, being an organizer, I sort of just fell into it by accident. Somebody said, "Oh, we're looking for some." The first job I think I did was membership secretary. So I would just take in, you know, membership forms and sort of collate them and so on. But of course, in those days, no technology at all. And one of my roles as a competition secretary, I can remember it was again Sid Roberts from Mardy and Anne Skirm, who was one of our international brevet judges at the moment. And we would be the gang of three, we called ourselves. Anne would do all the officials, Sid would do the program and do all the entries, receive all the entries, and I was the facilities man. I would chat with the sports centre and sort out how many trampolines we wanted. But of course, in those days, it wasn't sponsored. So if you went to an event, for example, we had one competition in Ebbw Vale. Now, Ebbw Vale only had 2 trampolines. We needed 8. So you have to import 6 trampolines.
Been there and done that many times.
Yeah. So you get in the wagon and you load it on. But not only do you have to import 6 trampolines, you also have to beg, borrow, or steal 4 or 5, 6 millimeter beds. So that on the day of the competition, you've laid out the hall, and at sort of 8:30 in the morning, you've only got 4 working trampolines. There are 4 empty trampolines, and everybody then is busy like bees putting beds on so we can start the warm up at 9 o'clock. You know, I don't know how I survived basically, but there we are. I've lost the thread now. I don't know what the question was initially.
Now that you've talked about it, but yeah, I've been in those kinds of situations more times than I care to shake. Yeah, I feel your pain. You also operate as a senior trampoline tutor and assessor on behalf of British Gymnastics. Indeed, you assessed me for my high performance coach back in 2008, and I vividly remember that encounter because you asked me to deliver full and half out, observing all of the preps and all that kind of stuff, and I remember being impassioned about teaching this skill one particular way because I believe that the benefits that could be gained from using that particular approach would be better for the all-round performance of the skill and the development of the gymnast and all of that kind of stuff. And you were sort of standing on the other side, saying that I should take a bit more of a broader view in my attack and address the same problem, but from a slightly different angle. And we were batting backwards and forwards on this issue quite a lot. And I remember that my gymnast, when I was talking to them afterwards, they were sat on the edge of their trampoline and they were kind of doing this, like being at a tennis match. At Wimbledon or whatever, and we got out after, and they're like, "Oi, what are you doing, man? Like, you don't argue with the assessor." Of course, we met in the middle somewhere, and we found an acceptable route that was right for both of us, and happy days. And perhaps some would argue that you have a lot to answer for passing me that day.
I take full responsibility.
How does tutoring and assessing within a trampoline learning environment, people who are maybe some are still at school, but many are beyond school age, how does that kind of environment compare against your experience of delivering trampolining and other sports within mainstream education?
Well, we're very fortunate in that trampolining is fun. If I can give it an example, in year 9, way back when, Welsh Joint Education Committee, which organised all the qualifications in Wales for physical education, they would put out a syllabus, and as part of that syllabus was gymnastics. So you had to do gymnastics up until year 9, and then sort of formal gymnastics, and then in year 10 they would then do the they would do their options and choose what they wanted to do at all levels, as it was in those days. But when they dropped the compulsory element for gymnastics, because you can imagine not every boy would enjoy gymnastics, the vaulting and the tumbling and the various other sort of body management skills that we would try and teach them. So what we decided to do in Blackwell, we were lucky in that we had acquired a number of trampolines. I don't know whether anybody knows this, but don't tell everybody. I think we only had 2 trampolines at Blackwood initially, but we ended up with 6. We acquired 2 from Kevin Forrest. Because we amalgamated, we went comprehensive. It was Blackwood Secondary School and Fairview Secondary School, where Kevin Forrest Youth Club was. So we had their trampolines. So that brought us up to 4. And then there were other schools. I know Oakdale, for example, a very good friend of mine, Mike Story. He had a trampoline and said, look, it's got cobwebs all over it. It's covered in dust. We've not used it in 5 years. We're going to throw it out. So basically, I got hold of the ground staff. They got a trailer, put it on. So we then acquired it. So at the end, we had something like about 6 trampolines. So we could put wall-to-wall trampolines inside one of our gyms. So in year 9, instead of the compulsory gymnastics, we offered trampolining. So in a PE lesson. So you can imagine at the start of a lesson, if it was ordinary gymnastics, we'd have about 4 or 5 boys with a letter a note from mum, which was written by Johnny around the corner, you know, to excuse him, or I forgot my kit or whatever. But then when we started trampolining, they were literally knocking on the door. Come on, sir, let's get in there. Because everybody on a trampoline can offer an answer. You get the guy who's a second row forward, he's 6'5" and 16 stone. He can still land on his front and stand up again. He can still do a swivel hips. I don't know much about a back somersault or a front somersault. That was a bit more difficult, but it was still fun. But everybody on a trampoline can give you an answer, and they can have lots and lots of fun because it gives them that freedom. And that's what that's what trampolining is all about. It enables you to fly.
If you had all of the boys that were queuing up at your door to come and have a go at trampolining, but then you pulled out the box of leotards and went, right, you got to wear this, and then they ran away again.
No, they were budgie smugglers, not leotards.
The use of that word fun, I think that's a really important thing to pick on, because it's often been commented on that yourself, with your experience and your enthusiasm for the sport, obviously we're referencing tutoring here, and one of your tutoring compatriots, Mr. Peter James, with his naughtiness and penchant for being a practical joker, that when you guys were delivering coaching courses together, you were known as the Chuckle Brothers. What's your opinion on how having an open, informal and fun environment can be for a really powerful, conducive learning arena for prospective coaches and gymnasts?
Well, I think it's the only answer, really. You have to enjoy what you're doing. And if you're enjoying something, you don't really recognize that you're learning as well. Because that's what the environment that I tried to generate was all about. It's a learning environment. And one of the things I always mention at the start of each sort of coaching session, I wouldn't say, you know, I'm the tutor, you've got to listen to what I say and this is the way to do it. I would always say, look, I've been trampolining for a long time. I've gathered a lot of experience and knowledge, and I'm just imparting that to you. But I will always learn something from you. So if I suggest something and you think, oh, I can do it differently, then don't ignore that fact. Let me know and we'll discuss it. And if it has any merits, then I'll add that into my list of tools in the toolbox, because there are so many ways in which you can do things. And of course, teaching this in this day and age has now come around to that idea that everybody is individual. You can't just have one sort of size that fits all. And it's the mark of a good coach or a good educator that you can adapt the way in which you teach so that everybody that you're working with is able to achieve something. If you're working your socks off and you're delivering the course content and you're putting out the knowledge, but not everybody's getting that knowledge, then there's something wrong with the way in which the knowledge is being disseminated. Yep. So you have to learn to be adaptable. And I think you have to have an environment where people are not afraid to speak and people are not afraid to share opinions and, you know, to discuss things with you. If you're the authoritarian sort of coach and say, this is the way you do it, you know, it's my way or no way, then you just don't get anywhere, do you?
Yeah, I completely agree. Completely agree. We talked a little bit about your judging earlier on, and obviously you've judged prolifically across the UK and of course abroad, and the fact that your first judging experience was at an international. Obviously you've done the rounds as a part of the Welsh team, as a judge for the Welsh team. I've been privy to a cheeky little story about one particular trip. I think it was to the Lule Cup, where you were present as a judge for the team. And after the competition had taken place and all that kind of stuff had been and gone, a little game of poker was started up in the bar afterwards. So there were people there like, you know, Simon Chick and Mark Samuels and the Yates twins. Well, they're not twins, are they? But Tom and Mike and Adam Fleet. And whilst there was no money on the table, you know, you were the poker equivalent of a toddler trying to walk for the first time. However, when the money started appearing out of people's pockets, then apparently you stepped your game up and you hustled the hell out of everybody, and apparently you cleaned up.
It's perfectly true, and hopefully a lesson will be learned from that. Don't take everything at face value. Yes, I think Mark Samuels couldn't believe it when I kept on putting over the cards, and he said, "You did it again, Tom. How did you do that? You got aces up your sleeve or something?" No, I said, "I just got the poker face, Mark, that's all." Yeah, that was a good time.
Having fun within your role, I think, is really intrinsic, and you put that across in so many ways. A notable way, of course, by you putting your own personal stamp on judging in Wales, and I believe that perhaps British Gymnastics Uniform Police would have a field day on the choice of ties that you elect to wear at events. Apparently, you're famous for your ties in Wales, Tony.
Well, this is true. I mean, in school, we had a little pact, and we'd always vary the ties according to the day. We'd have a Monday tie, which was dead boring, and then they would increase in intensity until the end, and there'd always be a competition for a Friday tie. And of course, at the end of term, we had to apply to noise abatement before we could put the tie on. So yeah, there we go. But for judging, I would always wear something appropriate. So the Welsh Nationals were always in December, so it had to be a Christmas tie. And of course, at all other times, and you're dealing with youngsters, for goodness sake, most of the time, so I would have a tie with Mr. Bounce on it. And I still got that tie to this day. And I wear that in most competitions. And that's one reason why I don't go to many British competitions, because they don't like me wearing Mr. Bounce. But there we go.
For the benefit of the video, I can see various people that are in this chat all nodding their heads, agreeing that they like Mr. Bounce tie. So yeah, no, it's brilliant. Tony, let's very briefly chat about some of the accolades that you've achieved along your way. Obviously, we've already mentioned your 1971 British team champion title, alongside your fellow Musketeers John Beer, Tony Abbott, and Simon Rees. You were the recipient of the Service to Sport Award from the BTF in 1997. You were awarded the Nick Stewart Honorary Life Membership Award from British Gymnastics in 2011, and the Lifetime Achievement Award from Welsh Gymnastics in 2013. Was being involved in sport ever about seeking accolades and glories and titles and things like that, or was it about perhaps achieving a softer goal instead?
Well, it's very nice to get those awards, because it's a mark basically to say thank you for all the work that you've done over the years. It's just that I enjoyed my career as a trampolinist, and I just love the sport of trampolining. And it's benefited me over the years. I don't know where I'd be today if it wasn't for the sport of trampolining. Because initially it led me to meet my great friend and mentor, Sid Aaron, who then opened the door, really introduced me to Cardiff College, and mainly because of him I applied. And guess who was on the interview panel when I was being interviewed? One gentleman by the name of Sid Aaron, plus others. So I would say his influence, had some way of getting me in there. So basically, I just enjoy the spreading the gospel, shall I say. I can see how much fun I had and how much benefit I had from it. And it's another way of communicating with people. I do enjoy getting the awards, but I don't seek them. And it was just, very pleasant and very nice to receive a token of sort of appreciation for all the work I've done, which was great.
Brilliant. I've got my final section, if that's okay, Tony. We've got to talk about your role as a jobbing trampoline coach. Obviously, you've coached prolifically for a number of clubs over the years, where you've had the opportunity to inspire and, like you talked about Sid doing it for you, positively influence the lives of both athletes and coaches with your you know, your enthusiastic and patient approach to coaching. And of course, the willing way in which you share your knowledge and experience of the sport with others. Obviously, you're a HPC yourself, and you've most recently, as part of your coaching career, been associated with Freefallers Trampoline Club, who are based in Abertili, just outside of Cwmbran, which of course is headed up by the effervescent Lisa, who we met earlier in that video, and who you've worked with really closely over a long number of years now. What is it about club coaching that keeps you giving so freely of your time across your coaching career?
Well, again, if I didn't do that, I would end up as a vegetable. I wouldn't have much to look forward to. You know, I've retired now from teaching. My relationship with British Gymnastics has changed in that they wanted me to become a what's the word, a contractor, so that I'd have to sort out my own tax and things. So I no longer now examine and tutor at British Gymnastics. Story for that, I actually went to my accountant to sort of sort out my tax. So I had, you know, the status of being a self-employed. And I did about 4 courses in 1 year, and I had to pay a fee to my accountant. And I think I made a profit of £55 that year. So I thought, this ain't working.
No,
so
if nobody has said that there's money in trampolining, then they're
well,
wrong.
That's right.
Wrong. That proves it right there. There is money in trampolining. Look at that, 55 quid.
No. That's right. So I then said to British Gymnastics, look, I will examine if I'm needed to, but you know, I won't charge a fee. You know, I'll do it gratis, sort of thing. But you know, they don't like the informality of that. So that's why I no longer do that for British Gymnastics. But I love the interaction with other people, and I still love the interaction with youngsters because they keep me young. And I love the fact that I'm having some sort of input into their development. And as I said, if I didn't teach trampolining, if I didn't coach trampolining, then I'd turn into a vegetable. You know, being retired, there are lots of other interests that I have, but my love of the sport of trampolining will be there forever. And I just love the people I work with.
But what is it about Freefallers specifically that's so special? What made you choose that club as your trampoline home?
Well, before I lost my good lady, I wasn't able to give time to actually coach at the club because you know you have to be there 3 or 4 times a week, and having had a busy life as a PE man and tutoring as well, I couldn't sort of devote time to actually coaching the club as well. So I would often pop across to Lisa in Abertili on a Friday night just to be social, just to sort of hang out with them. And I just loved the atmosphere of the club. It was a very friendly club, and the way in which the sort of performers are treated, the youngsters, there's no pressure. You know, there is pressure via competition, but the atmosphere was so friendly, family atmosphere, and the kids were brilliant, all Valley kids. And after then, you may know, I lost my good lady back in 2009. And then that really helped me in my sort of rehabilitation, if you like, because, you know, somebody who's been through a bereavement, you have to get yourself busy. You have to get yourself out there. You could stay in the house forever and just feel sorry for yourself and achieve nothing. So that's what I did. I just got out there, and I said, you know, to Lisa, I'd like to coach if you know, a bit more often, sort of thing. And at that time, there was a young lady who...
she was like, nah, you're right, mate.
That's right. Who had finished. So I took over her group. So I was then committed. And I've not looked back. So it's been, is it 13 years? Unbelievable. Yeah. Anyway, there we go. It's been 13 great years. And I love the crack of competitions. I do enjoy judging at competitions, you know, and I do love your commentaries. Keep us entertained.
I've heard tales about your amazing dancing during Free Fallers Club sessions, which sends the kids and the coaches alike into fits of hysterics. And I've heard another story about your dancing where you were one of the Welsh squad coaches at an event, and during a bit of downtime in the hotel room in the evening, you jumped up and you did the John Travolta "Staying Alive" dance. And you were singing the song because you had to clear up a wine spillage that had occurred on the hotel room's clean carpet.
That was red wine, and as you know, you apply cold water to red wine. So basically, I just grabbed a towel, chucked it on the floor, saturated water, and did the John Travolta dance on the towel to remove the red wine. Yes, guilty. That was me. Yes, and apparently the hips were moving in the same direction as the arms. What you want to say about
that? Did a career in dance performance ever look more enticing than trampolining?
No.
If it's okay, I'm gonna move on because I've got not a lot more left to ask. If I'm perfectly honest.
Oh, there we go.
I've got really one more question. And then one more tiny thing to show you at the end, because yeah, we've been long enough, and I apologize for taking so long to everybody. So just like the Joni Mitchell song, having seen the sport from both sides now, or indeed all sides, is there anything else that you still want to achieve within the sport of trampoline?
Well, to see our club go from strength to strength. What we are hoping to achieve is to get our own premises at some stage, so that we can train more often and get more people involved. So I suppose that's one aim that Lisa and I have got, is to try to go one further and to be able to get our own premises somewhere, so that we can have a club that can, you know, offer trampolining and other activities to the community as a whole. I think that's the only thing really. I've achieved an awful lot in trampolining. And I'm just happy to continue.
That would be amazing for you, and amazing for your part of Wales as well, I reckon.
That's right. Oh yes.
You can make that happen, then that would be grand. I'm going to call for one more question from Ainsley, if that's all right. Ainsley Plews, are you still in the room?
Hi, Ainsley.
Yeah,
You want to ask your question, my love?
Yeah, it was pretty similar to the question you just asked, really. Is there anything else that you kind of set a goal for at the beginning and you've achieved along the way, or any that you still want to achieve? Obviously, that one you just mentioned.
I think that's a really good thing. Goals at the start. Obviously, I've just asked about what you want to achieve now, but at the start of your career, what goals did you have set in mind at that point? Good question.
I wanted to become world champion, but I quickly realised that wasn't going to be the ultimate goal. But I just wanted to be the best that I could be, basically. I love the technical part of the sport. They called me Tony Fliff because within my first 2 years, or first year in Cardiff, actually, I quickly learned most of the flipper skills based on the half out. And in fact, there's another little by the by. In 1971, I went with Sid Aaron to. He was secretary of the International Technical Committee at that time. And he took me to Frankfurt to a meeting of the International Technical Committee to show the safe teaching of flipper skills. So I did the build-ups for, must have been about 12 different fliffies, hence the nickname Tony Fliff. So I think, again, that then sort of put me on to the education side, the teaching and tutoring side. So I wanted to spread the gospel. And I suppose if we could get our own premises, then I could work on mentoring coaches and working with prospective coaches, and then develop that side of the club so that we have a broader base to the pyramid, and you know, offer the sport of trampolining to many more people within the South Wales Valleys.
Brilliant, 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 brilliant. Tony, thank you for that. You'll be pleased to know that we've just about reached the end of this interview. However, when I was writing it, I wondered how I was going to bring it to an appropriate close. Obviously, your coaching contribution has been felt by hundreds and hundreds of trampoline athletes, not just from free fallers, but also from across Wales, you know, and beyond. And as you saw in the video earlier on with John and Lisa, all of the people that I've spoken to, both as part of my research for this interview and of course throughout my own involvement with the trampoline community, have always enthusiastically extolled your virtues as both a trampoline advocate and as a human being, with every single one of them saying that they're proud to call you their friend, and of course in Lisa's case, a much loved second father. I've got one final video to share with you, Tony.
Right, okay.
Which I hope will serve as a fitting conclusion to this interview, because I tell you what, I certainly couldn't be more eloquent if I tried.
Okay.
Could I respond from part of what I've listened to Tony there before you show that video?
Go for it, Dave.
Yeah, I got that utmost respect for Tony. We have been friends for many years, and as long as I can remember, and it is a long time. Tony was there, 1962, I can remember the first time we met. And I think Tony, had he been in our club, Cam Forest, because he was in a smaller club, I think Tony would have probably got further than what he did in trampolining, because when you got a successful team, you get success, everyone's successful. And I think Tony was probably way out on his own in Mardy. He improved much better when he went to Kincaid College, because he had better trampolinists. Tony, I've got the utmost respect for you. You've been there forever. I know that when I say we're about the same age, I'm 73, you were 73, you were 74 in June. You know, we're still going. Whatever you do, don't get on a trampoline.
Oh, I try not to these days.
Too dangerous now. Again, I got the utmost respect for you, and I wish you all the very best. When I saw this advertised on Facebook tonight, I thought I must go in just to listen to see what you say, and it's nice to see that. It brought back memories for me as well, because I've obviously forgotten a lot of stuff. And you mentioned Wayne Miller. Mine and I went out to America last year, and I actually emailed Wayne Miller, and they came and had a meal with us in San Diego, right outside the Alamo, in fact. And John
Brilliant.
Wayne, yeah, and it was nice to see him. And I hadn't seen him for 50 years, and it was like as if I saw him yesterday. It was just wonderful, and that's what the sport of trampoline have done. We've met so many people, and we've done so much. And again, some of the things I've forgotten, but you've stayed there, and you've done trampolining proud. Well done, Tony.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate that.
That's brilliant, Dave. Thank you so much for that. That's marvelous. That leads really nicely into the video that I'm going to share with you now, Tony.
Okay.
Tony, my friend and mentor. As I look back over the last 50 years since we first met in 1972, I cannot believe the times we have had, the times we have spent together. You really took me under your wing, and I am sure that on many occasions I saw far more of you than I did of my wife. Your continuous encouragement and support, knowledge and expertise molded me a lifetime of opportunities. Thank you. I have so many wonderful memories of our times together. From re-establishing a national squad to our vision of starting a centre of excellence for our young performers, to travelling together to Derby and later to Loughborough, attending the many weekends on training courses for tutors and examiners, and of course the ultimate experience of running our courses together, side by side. How I miss those days, Tony. The sheer fun we had. We were definitely, in my opinion, the Chuckle brothers of the trampolining world. The faces and our potential coaches when I used to tell them that you were my dad, and the way you laughed and jokingly rebuked me for being so cheeky. Those days of fun were delicious and addictive. But they passed so quickly, we could not wait for the next time we could work together. My dear friend, I could not have hoped to have met a more committed, gentle and genuine person. You are a true gentleman with a passion for trampolining and for helping others. I toast your good health, Tony, and offer you my sincere thanks. And as my favourite Welsh saying says, may two men meet once more before two mountains. Diolch yn fawr.
Oh gosh.
I knew I wasn't going to get through it without crying. Oh my gosh.
There we go.
Oh.
Yeah.
What?
Yes, Peter and I had many good times together.
I think that message sums up the feeling for everybody. Tony, thank you so much for joining me this evening. I tell you what, it's been an honor and a privilege for me to be able to run back through everything with you and for you to share so freely. So thank you so much for joining me.
You're very welcome, and thanks everybody for just listening. It's great to spread the word. Excuse me.
And of course, thank you to everyone who's joined us this evening. I hope that you've enjoyed this chat. It's been wonderful for me to put it on. So yeah, I hope that you've enjoyed yourselves. Take it steady, and we will see you all on the circuit soon.